Our scripture this morning will sound familiar. It's what we read together previously. Matthew 16, verses 24 through 28. And I'll just repeat them all together now. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "One who wishes to follow me, let one deny oneself and take up one's cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save one's life shall lose it, and whoever loses one's life for my sake will find it. For how would a person be benefited if one should not gain the whole world and lose one's own soul? Or what shall a person be given in exchange for one's soul? For the Son of Humankind will come in the glory of God and the holy angels and reward each person according to one's works. Truly, I say to you, there are people who stand here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Humankind coming into the kingdom." Matthew 16, verses 24, 28. So there are three important things I want to talk to you about today. One of them is right here in this passage. It's the one we read. It is one of several passages in the gospel, three of the gospels minus John, that is often cited as proof of the second coming. This is where Jesus will return in the flesh and rule the earth. In some of the gospel versions, they actually refer to it as this generation, meaning in the lifetime of the disciples. But we know from our call to worship this morning a very crucial component. We heard Jesus spoke these things to the people in parables, and without parables, he didn't speak to them. So therefore, a parable must be deciphered and dissected. It is not literal. And from a metaphysical perspective, I don't hear any promise in there about returning to the flesh. It's too literal for our master of the parables. And he certainly isn't just running 2,000 years late. I think he's promising something far greater. Something I think we saw the birth of just a few weeks ago in human consciousness. There are people who stand here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Humankind coming to the kingdom. So he's not promising that our physical bodies will not die. If you thought you were going to escape with this mortal coil, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. And he speaks of the coming into his kingdom in the more gender-oriented version, the more antiquated version. And he speaks of the Son of Man coming into his kingdom. And that sounds more like an ascension to me rather than a return of the flesh. So he's speaking of the soul, of course. In fact, the verse right before. For how would a person benefit if one should gain the whole world and lose one's soul? Or what shall a person be given in exchange for one's soul? So linked together, he says the most crucial aspect of ourselves, our soul, will not die. It will not stagnate as long as we keep moving forward, just moving forward to our higher selves. We may incarnate over and over, have many deaths, but our soul obviously is eternal. Let's back up even 2 verses before that. One who wishes to follow me, let one deny oneself and take up one's cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save one's life shall lose it, and whoever loses one's life for my sake will find it. So it will be hard. Notice he says we have to take up our own cross, not the cross, not his cross. We have to take up our own cross, our own challenges, our difficulties, our stubbornness, and take whatever necessary steps there are for our soul's growth. Then we shall be rewarded with a permanent awareness of higher consciousness, the kingdom, full-time communion with God. I think of Jesus as a first responder in this kind of respect, hearing the call to the higher self, not returning to his lower self. And that means that this idea of what's going forward, how we reach the kingdom, means that it's up to us to evolve. We have to do it. It's in our fourth principle, by the way. We believe in personal responsibility. We create our own happiness or unhappiness as we live in harmony or discord with natural, physical, and spiritual laws. So I think it really hurts us when we think, well, then I'm just going to sit here and wait for Jesus. He's going to come back, and it kind of absolves us of this personal responsibility. We've got to do it ourselves. But then, what does that mean? If we have to do it, if we have to ascend, then we are the second coming. This is it. It's our journey toward God's consciousness that is the second coming of Christ. And Christhood, we know, is alive and well in each and every one of you. Let me see your eyeballs, each and every one of you, and all of you online. Every single one. It's evolving, growing, defying death because we just keep at it. And this time, it's not going to come in scattered, ascended individuals, but as a collective. We are ascending together, which has its beauties and why it probably feels like it takes so long sometimes. Part 2. My sister and I were at my father's place a few weeks ago, and we were awakened at 5 o'clock in the morning by this enormous bang, actually 2 of them, a loud crack and then an explosion, a small explosion. And it's dark, it's 5 in the morning. My room faces the street there. And I see a telephone pole swinging by the wires. I should actually say half a telephone pole swinging by the wires. And then I squint, it's dark, and I see this man coming towards the house, but he looks like a Yeti. He's kind of slumped over, he's small, he's scurrying around. And my father has 2 big dogs, and anybody who comes to the front door, they just lose it. So now the house is up. My sister says, Scott, we need you. I go, oh yeah, I know, that's my job. So I'm in my pajamas, I put on a winter coat, and I go out the side door so that the guy will not keep banging on the front door. And there he is, he's bleeding, he's conscious, and he's smoking a cigarette. And he said, I think I wrecked my truck. All right, so he somehow miraculously is cognizant enough to remember his brother's phone number. So I called Mike. I said, Mike, there's been an accident, your brother's here. And he said, well, I'm far away. And I said, oh, okay, fine. And I hang up, and the guy says, I can't remember my girlfriend's number or my mother's number. Can you go get my phone? It's in the truck. So I go out to the street. I remember it's dark, so I'm sure it's probably right there. Maybe it's on the side. The truck, one of those big monstrosities, is buried a foot deep into the soil and leaning against a tree. It's vertical and it's hissing. And thank you for that. You don't want to go near a hissing truck. And I go, okay, 911, please send the crew. And that first responder that I contacted by phone said, is he okay? What's he look like? And then an extraordinary question to me. She says, does he have a weapon? And I went, I don't know. Do Yetis carry weapons? Why would I? And I thought, well, of course, that makes sense from her perspective. I'm worried about the dogs, my dad, the hissing truck, but I don't think, could this escalate? Wasn't farthest thing from my mind. They come, They get the guy off. He's still conscious, blabbing away, probably smoking a cigarette in the ambulance. Takes him away, tells his brother where to meet him. Okay. Then a responder comes up, one of the physical ones, and he says, was there anybody else in the car? And I went, I am so out of it here. There are two big questions, and I missed them both. I said, I don't know. I don't know if he's got a weapon. I don't know if there's anybody in the truck. It was hissing. I'm not going there. So they check, they do their due diligence. Everybody is close to leaving except a few policemen who remain. And they said, and now we're going to take this away. And I said, how can you, it's planted. How can you get that away? And it's going to need a crane or something. He goes, no, we're going to get rid of it right now. I said, well, why? He said, because we don't want rubberneckers to cause more accidents. So these first responders had a metaphysical perspective that wasn't even on my radar screen. They were seeing the bigger picture. And how could I see that? I was worried about my dad and my stepmother and the dogs. And my moment then was to take care of them. I get that. But the first responders, they saw the meta picture. They saw it. Part 3. Here's why I think this is so miraculous, the times we're in. We're getting a little taste of what it feels like to be a metaphysical first responder with the war in Ukraine. We're not on the ground. Most of us don't know people personally there, maybe some. We're not involved with the animals or people slumped against the door. But we can see the bigger picture. We can see the soul situation of it. Now, let's be very clear. What I'm about to talk about is not about our human instinct to help or our desire to rush to their aid. I'm not talking about geopolitics, nuclear threats, aid, sanctions, escalation. Not at all. I'm not talking about the events or the solutions or the tactics. What I'm talking about is humankind's soul growth took a big step on February 24th, 2022. We entered a new phase of consciousness because overnight, instinctively, we said, no, it's not right. You don't invade another country. You don't cause harm to people. Our first response was immediate, unplanned, visceral, collective. This isn't right. Something is, I don't know how to fix it, but it is not right. Doesn't suit our consciousness anymore. We may have a history of that kind of behavior, but it's what kind of retroactive action is that? Now, we may not know what the correct response is, or the reaction, or the best rebuttal, or what the best counter moves are. But we got a sign. We got a sign of the Aquarian age in February. I didn't think I was going to see it, quite honestly. It's not very peaceful. It's not very pretty. But if it is indeed a mental universe which we preach and we learn and we teach and we experience, then we are the first responders of thought. Perhaps not yet of action, but of thought. And it's highly significant because we moved collectively and we're not going backwards. War is as inappropriate as a truck trying to be a lawn dart. It just doesn't suit us. So with all the news you have read, with all the news you will read, all the storylines that are unfolding, like watching some kind of lethal sporting match, rest assured that we have evolved. sloppy but forward. It may go south on the ground, but our spirit has risen above. And over time, inshallah, we will see less and less of these brutal events. And this is the second coming of Christhood. Through your instinctual, soulful responses. Thank you, you first responders of consciousness. You made it happen. We've taken up our 21st century cross. We have honored our collective soul, and we have taken a big step towards the kingdom. I may be wrong, but I sense Master Jesus is very proud of us. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Children of the Lord. Keith, put me on key, please. Please join us. We'll do 1 and 3 of We're Climbing Jacob's Ladder. You may stay seated if you wish. We are climbing Jacob's